All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Time to continue our series in the Kybalion and looking into the wisdom of the ages, in this case, Hermetic philosophy. And we find ourselves on part number 3 of the divine paradox, ladies and gentlemen, which has been amazing and fascinating. The quote at the beginning of this 6th chapter of the Kybalion, the Divine Paradox, says, "The half-wise, recognizing the comparative unreality of the universe, imagine that they may defy its laws. Such are vain and presumptuous fools, and they are broken against the rocks, torn asunder by the elements by reason of their folly. The truly wise, knowing the nature of the universe, use law against laws, the higher against the lower, and by the art of alchemy transmutate that which is undesirable into that which is worthy, and thus triumph. Mastery consists not in abnormal dreams, visions, fantastic imaginings, or living, but in the using the higher forces against the lower, escaping the pains of the lower planes by vibrating on to the higher. Transmutation, not presumptuous denial, is the weapon of the master." Now, this entire chapter so far has been about the ultimate paradox, the divine paradox. And this, once again, thank you for joining me. We're reading this for purposes of teaching and commentary and expanding the mind so that hopefully through an increased awareness of ourselves and the nature of reality, we can hopefully increase the quality of our lives. This is the paradox of the universe resulting from the principle of polarity, which manifests when the all begins to create, or when God begins to create. And so, without me beginning to ramble for 40 minutes before we start where we need to be, I am going to jump right back to our bookmark, ladies and gentlemen. We have already done 2 parts on this chapter, as well as the previous half of this book in this series. So if you've missed any of that, be sure to go back and check that out. And once again, thank you for being here. Let us dive right in to part number 3 of the Divine Paradox. Matter is nonetheless matter to us while we dwell on the plane of matter, although we know it to be merely an aggregation of electrons or particles of force vibrating rapidly and gyrating around each other in the formations of atoms. The atoms in turn vibrating and gyrating, forming molecules, which latter in turn form larger masses of matter. Nor does matter become less matter. When we follow the inquiry still further and learn from the Hermetic teachings that the quote-unquote force of which the electrons are, it's always interesting, that force part there, the universal infinite intelligence that is running all of this, while we aren't even, even if we were to try to contemplate the activity and the functions of our body, we would still, it's just too much goings on, everything in the world all the time. When I'm painting and looking at nature, sometimes it's almost like a constant painting, evolving with the shadows and the colors and reflections of light. And it's just amazing, this force behind all of this, including down to the smallest, down to the particles of force, or simply energy, from the world of waves and frequencies to the world of particles. However, nor does matter become less matter. When we follow the inquiry further and learn from the Hermetic teachings that the force, of which the electrons are but units, is merely a manifestation of the mind of the all, of God. And like all else in the universe, is purely mental in its nature. Now, this has been what this chapter has been about. While the universe is not, it also is. And viewing the universe through mortal faculties, it is very real indeed and must be so considered. But at the same time, we must also recognize the absolute view and must not make the mistake of ignoring and denying that it is a thought within the mind of God, but also we cannot deny the facts and phenomena of the universe as they present themselves to our mortal faculties. We are not God, however, we are a part of it. Let us go back to a little bit we read from last week. To make familiar illustrations, we all recognize the fact that matter exists to our senses. This will connect to what we're talking about right now. And we will fare very badly here in reality if we do not recognize the fact that matter exists, which is very obvious. Everyone's probably saying, yes, of course. What are you talking about? Well, and yet even our finite minds understand the scientific dictum that there is no such thing as matter from a scientific point of view. So we all recognize and function based on this recognition of something that isn't real at all. But at the same time, it is real. What do I mean? Well, if you're not getting it, let me continue. From a scientific point of view, that which we call matter is held to be merely an aggregation of atoms, which atoms themselves are merely a grouping of units of force called electrons or ions, vibrating and in a constant circular motion. We kick a stone and we feel the impact. It seems to be real, notwithstanding that we know it to be merely what we have stated just before. But remember that our foot, which feels the impact by means of our brains and our sensory, our mortal faculties, as it was describing it, but even more perplexing, by means of our minds are likewise matter, so constructed of these electrons, which are not matter, and for that matter, so are our brains. And at the best, if it were not by reason of our mind, we would not know the foot or the stone at all. So that brought me to the funny the funny realizations, like, what are we then? Well, what in the infinite mind of God is real in a degree second only to that reality itself is vested in the nature of God or the mind of God. So, with that being said, before I ramble any further, I'm really tempted to ramble further here. It's like the main point of this whole chapter has been realizing there's two sides. One side of the picture is the relative truth, which is the physical reality that we experience. But then there is the absolute truth that this is all within the mind of God. Let us continue now. While on the plane of matter, we must recognize its phenomena, and we may control matter, as all masters of higher or lesser degree do, but we do so by applying the higher forces. We commit a folly when we attempt to deny the existence of matter in the relative spot. Kitten comes to say hello. That's fine. But we may deny its mastery over us. And rightly so, but we should not attempt to ignore it in its relative aspect, at least so long as we dwell here in the physical plane. Nor do the laws of nature become less constant or effective when we know them, likewise to be merely mental creations. So this is the paradox that this is all about, this divine paradox that there are these, reality is a mental creation. However, we have to respect the reality of it, despite it being an illusion. And so this is what we are attempting to come to terms here with. We overcome the lower laws by applying still higher ones, and in this way only. But we cannot escape law or rise above it entirely. Nothing but the all can escape law. Nothing but God can escape law. And that because the all is law itself, from which all laws emerge. The most advanced masters may acquire the powers usually attributed to the gods of men. And there are countless ranks of being in the greatest hierarchy of life whose being and power transcends even that of the highest masters among men to a degree unthinkable by mortals. But even the highest master and the highest being must still bow to the law and be as nothing in the eye of God or the all, Atum. So that if even these highest beings, whose powers exceed even those attributed by men to gods, if even these are bound and subservient to law, then imagine the presumption of mortal man and of our race and grade when we dare to consider the laws of nature as unreal, visionary, illusory, because he happens to be able to grasp the truth that the laws are mental in nature and simply mental creations of the all. Those laws, which the all intends to be governing laws, are not to be defined or argued away. What do you think, Kitten? Are you researching the Kybalion here today? The Hermetic principle of mentalism, ladies and gentlemen, which is the first of these 7 Hermetic principles. We're just going to let you hang out. It's no worries, Beans. Let us go back to the 7 Hermetic principles and rediscover the principle of mentalism real fast, ladies and gentlemen. Number 1, the principle of mentalism, the all is mind and the universe is mental. This principle embodies the truth that the all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the underlying substantial reality, which is underlying all outward manifestations or physical things that we see here, and appearances, which we know under the terms of the material universe, life, matter, energy, which is what we're talking about. And so it explains that the phenomenal world or universe is a mental creation of God, subject to the laws of created things and the universe, and as a whole, in its parts or units, has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. Now, with that being said, let us come back. The Hermetic principle of mentalism, while explaining the true nature of the universe upon the principle that all is mental, does not change the scientific conceptions of the universe, life, or evolution. In fact, science merely corroborates the Hermetic teachings. The latter merely teaches that the nature of the universe is mental, while modern science is taught that it is material, or of late, the book says, that it is energy at the last analysis. The Hermetic teachings have no fault to find with Herbert Spencer's basic principle, with which postulates the existence of an infinite eternal energy from which all things proceed. In fact, we can now finally move our bookmark. It's good to get caught up. In fact, the Hermeticists recognize in Spencer's philosophy the highest outside statement. Oh, forgot the microphone was over on the side over there. That's fine. No worries. Once again, I'm just learning this for myself. And, I figured why not do it here on a YouTube channel? So I've been doing that for a couple of years. So if you're here joining me, thank you. Appreciate you so much. We can go on this journey together if you're interested in the Kybalion and you want to listen to me ramble on about it and try to discover, which is what seems to be a very important spiritual philosophy that has survived for a very long time, this being a modern adaptation of somebody's ideas about this ancient philosophy. So this specifically is not Hermetics, but this is someone's ideas of everything they've studied and the two mentors they had, which was William Walker Atkinson, and the two that inspired him, which is the three initiates down here. So there are those that will say this is not Hermetic, and this is somebody's take on Hermetic philosophy. With that being said, it seems to be pretty well respected. Now, let me continue before I ramble on anymore. And once again, thank you for being here. We got to go back because I got caught off track. The kitten is a little bit of a distraction, but that's just fine. Now, the Hermetic teachings have no fault to find with Herbert Spencer's basic principle, which postulates the existence of an infinite, eternal energy, God, Atum, from which all things proceed. In fact, the Hermeticists recognize in Spencer's philosophy the highest outside statement of the workings of the natural laws that have ever been promulgated. And they believe Spencer to have been a reincarnation of an ancient philosopher who dwelt in ancient Egypt thousands of years ago, who later incarnated as Heraclitus, the Grecian philosopher who lived BC 500. This is a random story. I'm like, what? What does this have to do with the divine paradox? But it's very interesting. This Herbert Spencer character must have been an interesting figure, apparently, and they regard his statement of the infinite and eternal energy as directly in the line of Hermetic teachings, always with the addition of their own doctrine that his energy is the energy of the mind of the all. With the master key of the Hermetic philosophy, the student of Spencer will be able to unlock many doors of the inner philosophical conceptions of the great English philosopher, whose work shows the results of the preparation of his previous incarnations. But that is open to debate. Interesting, nevertheless, his teachings regarding evolution and rhythm are in almost perfect agreement with the Hermetic teachings regarding the principle of rhythm. So, the student of Hermetics need not lay aside any of our cherished scientific views regarding the universe. I would say, though, definitely ask questions and question answers regarding almost everything we've been taught about reality. That doesn't mean you discredit everything either. We become more open. Now, all we are asked to do is to grasp this underlying principle of the all is mind, and the universe is mental, held in the mind of the all. It doesn't mean that it isn't real for us. But at the same time, anyways, we will find that the other six of the seven principles of Hermetics after mentalism will fit into quote unquote modern scientific knowledge, and we will serve to bring out obscure points and to throw light into the dark corners. This is not to be wondered at, and when we realize the influence of the Hermetic thought on early philosophers of Greece, upon whose foundations of thought the theories of modern science largely rest, the acceptance of the first Hermetic principle, mentalism, is the only great point of difference between modern science and Hermetic students, mystic philosophers, maybe. The science is gradually nowadays, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, moving towards more, similar to that of a Hermetic position in its grouping and in the dark for a way out of the labyrinth. Sometimes it throws a random sentence in there that's kind of poetic to go on top. But and science is gradually moving toward the Hermetic position in its groping in the dark for a way out of the labyrinth into which it has wandered in its search for reality. The purpose of this lesson, ladies and gentlemen, is to impress upon the minds of us students, seekers, the fact that to all intents and purposes, the universe and its laws and its phenomena are just as real so far as man or woman, human beings, are concerned, and as they would be under the hypothesis of materialism or energism. I have never heard that one. The energy version of materialism. We get the point, though. Under any hypothesis, the universe in its outer aspect is changing, ever flowing, and transitory, and therefore devoid of substantiality and reality. There's the paradox. But note the other pole of the truth, using the principle of polarity. Under any of the same hypothesis, we are compelled to act and live as if the fleeting things were real and substantial. Once again, it makes me think of Bill Hicks. It's just a ride. All these thrills and chills and funny colors and ups and downs. It just has to be real. As if the fleeting things of life are real and substantial. Well, wouldn't it be a sad thing if we didn't enjoy them at least as so in the moment? But don't get so lost that under the old views mental power was ignored as a natural force, while under mentalism it becomes the greatest ability, power, natural force that we all have constant access to. But what are we doing with that? That's a really great question for us all to ponder on and contemplate, as Hermes taught us in the very beginning in the prophecies of Hermes in the Hermetica, was that a pure philosophy is a spiritual striving through a constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God, what is being referenced as the All in the Kybalion. And so, we must contemplate more to attain this knowledge. With that being said, with this difference always between the various hypotheses that under the old views mental power was ignored. Oh, yeah. And under mentalism, it becomes the greatest natural force. And this one difference revolutionizes our lives, ladies and gentlemen. When we begin to live from this perspective of that our minds is our greatest ability, our greatest power, our greatest natural force, and that we should learn to use it very well, which is a difficult challenge, I'll say. But that's just a thought. So why is it difficult? Because you think that it is difficult. There was a funny thing Wayne Dyer said one time. It was like somebody asked him, "What are the blocks to my happiness?" Like, what are the things blocking my happiness? And he said, it could be the belief that you have blocks. It could just be that simple. ladies and gentlemen, and that is the greatest natural force and the power of our minds under the concept and the perspective of mentalism. And this one difference revolutionizes life to those who understand the principle and its resulting laws and practice. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully us, seekers and students all, grasp the advantage of mentalism and learn to know, use, and apply the laws resulting therefrom. But do not yield to the temptation which, as the Kybalion states, overcomes the half-wise and which causes them to be hypnotized by the apparent unreality of things, the consequence being that they wander about like dream people dwelling in a world of dreams, ignoring the practical work and life of man and women, of us, that we have to do here, chopping wood and carrying water. Before enlightenment. After enlightenment, what are we doing? Chopping wood, carrying water. But we just have an entirely new perspective. Like, we enjoy the chopping wood, and we find the purpose, and we see the beauty in the water. I was elaborating a bit on that, but you get the idea there. And so, as quoting poetically back to earlier, those, the half-wise they call it, which would not see the practical reality, becoming over influenced, or too much, once again back to holding two opposing ideas at the same time. They're not like, okay, since the universe is mental, then it is not practical, that it should go all the way in on one side, or we could be totally in the materialism side where the universe is 0%, it's all just. And see, we need to be able to hold the divine paradox, two opposing opinions at the same time, with the advantage of mentalism and understanding the absolute view of reality, but then also seeing the objective, absolute. I lost it. What was it? It was the absolute and the. It's like the subjective and the objective. The absolute and the apparent. Anyways, where we act and live as if the fleeting things were real and substantial, but yet we have to respect them as so, because if we do not, we become hypnotized. The half truth, the half, only getting one side of the picture would be half. That's funny that it took till part 3 of this to sink in, because that was the very first thing it said, the half wise. It's literally the first word at the beginning of this chapter. You can't really see it, but the half wise, recognizing the comparative unreality, become these dreamers, which causes them to be hypnotized by the apparent unreality of things. And the consequence being that they end up wandering about like dream people dwelling in a world, ignoring the practical work and life, the chopping wood and carrying water of man and women, humanity, and the end being that they are broken against, metaphorically, the rocks and torn asunder by the elements, but that can mean a much deeper thing. They're broken against the mental struggles of reality that come from living in an illusion. There's a very deep way to describe that, but because if they are living in this illusion that you don't have to live practical, everything is just a mental illusion of the mind of God, then they will be destroyed by normal life. Because once again, we have to chop wood and carry in water, while also realizing the ultimate reality. They would rather follow the example of the wise than the half-wise, which the same authority states. Use law against laws, the higher against the lower, and by the art of alchemy transmutate that which is undesirable into that which is worthy, and thus triumph. Following the authority, let us avoid the half-wisdom, in parentheses, which is folly, which ignores the truth that mastery consists not in abnormal dreams and visions and fantastic imaginings or living, but in using the higher forces against the lower, escaping the pains of the lower planes by vibrating onto the higher. Remember always, students, myself, ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, transmutation, not presumptuous denial, is the weapon of the master. The above quotations are from the Kybalion and are worthy of being committed to memory by the student. We do not live in a world of dreams, but in a universe which, while relative, is real so far as our lives and actions are concerned. Our business in the universe is not to deny its existence, but to live, using the laws to rise above, from lower to higher, and living on, doing the best that we can under the circumstances arising each day, and living so far as it is possible to our highest ideas and ideals. The true meaning of life is not known to men on this plane, if indeed to any. I would argue that, actually. I think the true meaning of life is within the first pages of the Hermetica. Well, at least within the first bit of the prophecies of Hermes. But that can be debated as well, so we'll leave that open to discussion. We'll leave that open to contemplation. Remember, constant contemplation. But we're doing the best that we can under the circumstances arising each day, and living so far as is possible to our highest ideas and ideals. The true meaning of life is not known on this plane, if indeed to any, but the highest authorities and our own intuitions teach us that we will make no mistake in living up to the best that is in us so far as is possible, and realizing the universal tendency in the same direction in spite of apparent evidences to the contrary. We are all on the path, and the road leads ever upward, with frequent resting places. Read the message of the Kybalion and follow the example of the wise, avoiding of making the mistake of the half-wise, who will struggle by reason of their folly. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a boom to the end of the 6th chapter in the Kybalion, the Divine Paradox. Wow, that one is powerful. That was an intense and very deep chapter. Definitely the longest of the book so far. I really like that last bit there. We do not live in a world of dreams, but in a universe which, while relative, is real so far as our lives and actions are concerned. Our business in the universe is not to deny its existence, but to live, using the laws to rise above from the lower to the higher, and living ever onward. Doing the best that we can under the circumstances arising each day, and living so far as possible to our highest ideas and ideals. The true meaning of life? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's probably really the question that leads us all to even ponder. philosophy, mystic philosophy, esoteric, occult, spiritual traditions, wisdom traditions, the last words of thrice great Hermes from the opening of the Hermetica. And I'll have both of these books linked in the description below. If you'd like to get them for yourself, put them on your shelf. Now, last words of thrice great Hermes, Tris Majestus. Wise words, although written by my decaying hand, remain imperishable throughout time, imbued with the medicine of immortality by the All-Master. Be seen, be unseen, and undiscovered by all those who will come and go, wandering the wastelands of life. Be hidden until an older heaven births human beings who are worthy of your wisdom. Having sounded this prayer over the works of his hands, Hermes was received into the sanctuary of eternity. I definitely want to go back over the history of the Hermetica. At the heart of Hermes' teachings is one simple idea that God is a big mind. Everything which exists is a thought within the mind of God. This book, this video, is a thought within the mind of God. Our body, these ideas, are all thoughts in the mind of God. How can we understand this? Well, we've been on that journey for 3 books now. We've done this one, the Corpus Hermeticum, and we are on the Kybalion, halfway through. But that brings us back to that question. The meaning of life? Well, what is the meaning of life? Pure philosophy is a spiritual striving through a constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God. But not as fanciful theories. What did it say there? As devotion, as reverence, as honor. The student of pure philosophy studies the sciences. That's just what today was talking about. Not as fanciful theories, but as devotion to Atum, because they reveal a universe that is perfectly ordered by the power of number. This leads, whether it be the forces of fire, the magnitudes of physical things, the depths of the sea, this leads to a reverent awe. This is the meaning of this is the ultimate question. Like, what is the meaning of life? Well, we just got earlier, simply to live and to be here. But that then, through the student of pure philosophy, leads to a reverent awe at the Creator's skill and wisdom, because the mysteries of music bear witness to the unsurpassed talent of the supreme artist, who has beautifully harmonized all things into a single whole, suffused with sweet melodies. But to put that more simply, we'll go to the very beginning of the Corpus Hermeticum, and Hermes Trismegistus, speaking to his son, O my son, write this first book, both for humanity's sake and for reverence and honor towards God, Atum, the All. For there can be no spiritual pursuit, religion, more true or just than to know the things that are. And then, what is the meaning of life? To acknowledge thanks for all things, after recognizing it as creation, that which we are a part of, whatever name you give that, if you just want to call it universe, if you want to call it God, the Tao, grand organized design, great spirit, universal intelligent design, universal animating intelligence, we honor that in seeing that we are a part of it, and to acknowledge thanks for that and to that which hath made them, which thing we shall hopefully not cease continually to do, but then always, as is the Corpus Hermeticum, the greatest question is asked: what then, O Father, should a man do to lead his life well, seeing that there is nothing here true? Which goes back to the subject of the divine paradox, which is where we will finish up here today, because we know the answer to that question now. We must see the comparative unreality, and we must see both sides of the truth rather than a half truth, so that we can, hopefully function of our highest ability. But like I said, we're doing the best we can with the circumstances that continue to present themselves. And hopefully, as Alan Watts put it, we can kind of battle this. I think he was talking about fencing, or maybe, but we can kind of battle with life with some gusto, some ability. And instead of feeling so much responsibility and weight on our shoulders all the time, we can actually respond to life with some ability. But that takes work, takes cultivation. That's why I always say there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Why? What does that mean? We must create the ability within ourselves to bring it to life. Then the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, when I get this much or have this, that becomes irrelevant, because hopefully we are there, and then the journey is wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Remember to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through greater awareness and understanding of the nature of ourselves and reality, so that through that increased awareness we can increase the quality of our lives. Also, remember to seek to discover the lost wisdom of the ages and the mysteries of our history. Also, there's a link in the description box below the video to Corpus Hermeticum, to the Hermetica, and to the Kybalion. So you can get all three for yourself to put it on your shelf and follow along in future episodes, or just for personal reference. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're ready for more constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of, as Hermes put it, the things that are. Oh yeah, also a link to my Etsy shop and my landscape paintings, as well as a link to C60 Power, the ultimate antioxidant known to man, Nobel Prize winning. Give yourself the gift of health. There should be a 10% off link there. And oh yeah, I also created a Patreon, so if you'd like to help me out with a few bucks and help support the work that we do here, it would mean so much to me. And if I do get a few of those, I'll begin doing some extra content for Patreon exclusive. So we'll see. Could be silly stuff, ramblings, behind the scenes. Who knows, ladies and gentlemen? It's wherever we go on this journey. All right, I'm rambling again. Love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Until next time, remember, be the change that you want to see. Be the example that you want to set. No, 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 no. Thank you.